Hello again. Welcome back to Kingdom Tales. I'm Father Lee, and we are going to continue reading from the second book of the Kingdom Tales, The Tales of the Resistance, by David and Karen Maines. I think that we all know that we should be sharing Jesus' message, Jesus' gospel, the good news about what God is doing with the people who are around us. But sometimes the idea of sharing our faith with other people is very intimidating. It's very scary because a lot of times we feel like we are putting ourselves in a very vulnerable place, like we are alone, like we are just going out on our own to do these things. But that's not true. What's true is that Jesus is already at work all around us. He's already at work right now building his kingdom. And our job is to ask the Father to open our eyes to see the places where Jesus is at work all around us. And then through the Holy Spirit, give us courage to join him in the work that he's already doing. Today's story is Doubletalk, Triple Tongue, and Theysay. Heralds stood on broadcast columns throughout Enchanted City, shouting the news. They announced special events as well as the hour of the night. Because of power outs, however, no one really knew the correct time. One herald might proclaim midnight, all's well, while another shouted 10:30 o'clock. Half night approaches. No wonder citizens suffered from indigestion. They were always eating dinner at the wrong hour. Doubletalk, Triple Tongue, and Theysay were friends. The three boys had grown up in Moiroxen, the tenement slums that stretched for miles, hovel stacked upon hovel. Together they endured illness, poverty, hunger, and branding. When Theysay's parents died, the other two helped him escape orphan dragnets by hiding him back and forth in their own tenement hovels at great risk of penalty to themselves. All were now heralds of the enchanter and proud of their accomplishment. It was something for penniless young men to rise to heraldship, to stand on the tall broadcast columns trusted with all the news fit to proclaim. It was something for ragtag ruffians to wear the red and yellow jerseys with the enchanter's insignia of blazing fire. It was something to blow the herald horn whenever the wizard's sleek black limousine moved ominously through the city streets and shout, "The enchanter's coming! Make way for the enchanter!" Unfortunately, heralds frequently made contradictory announcements. One might shout, "Melons in the marketplace, first come, first served," while the herald on the very next post was shouting, "No melons today, try rutabagas in your fruit salad." Some people suspected that heralds were chosen only if they had something wrong with their speech. Some heralds spoke backwards. Some had twisted tongues. Some had lock mouth, so that all the S's whistled through their clenched teeth with a wicked hiss. Some had very bad breath. Doubletalk made positive announcements out of one side of his mouth. "Enchanter's coming," for instance, or "Melons in the marketplace," would be announced out of the right side. Negative announcements, however, would be shouted out of the left side of his mouth. "Enchanter's not coming. Melons have all been stolen." Trouble began when Doubletalk couldn't decide if the announcement was negative or positive. Was the theft of the rutabagas good news or bad news? Or maybe it was a good thing that the enchanter wasn't coming? Consequently, he began to make announcements out of both sides of his mouth. "Enchanter's coming," on the right side, "Enchanter's not coming." And then he spoke both at the same time, and his tongue worked so hard it eventually split in two. Doubletalk always worked up a sweat But no one appreciated his great effort. People stood beneath his column and shouted, "Hey, Bob, make up your mind. What you got, wet noodle brains?" And then they threw rotten tomatoes at him. Triple-Tongue faltered over each word 3 times. The enchanter's coming, he would cry. His announcements took a very long time. After a while, he discovered that if he rushed his words, his tongue wouldn't triple so much, so he learned to shout, "The enchanter's coming!" Unfortunately, no one, except Theysay, could understand him. People standing beneath his post would wrinkle their noses and say, what? Why don't you talk plain?" And then they'd rock his post. The third friend, Theysay, had learned early never to state an opinion of his own. That was bound to get you into trouble. "They say the enchanter's coming," he'd proclaim, or "They say the enchanter's not coming." He never took the blame for anything he said, because he only said what they said. And he said what they said even when he knew he shouldn't say it, because he only said what he said because other people said it. People beneath his column would look at each other and whisper in amazement, "Did you hear him say what they said?" He was the only herald of the 3 who ever won popular approval. One day, Triple-Tongue said to Doubletalk and Theysay, "Say, I'm getting tired of people saying a and what and rocking my post." Triple-Tongue felt that heralding might not be all it was cracked up to be. Doubletalk answered, "That could be good, or it might be bad, or it's probably both, actually." "Well," said Theysay, "they said there are a new batch of heralds being trained. They say some of the old heralds will be put out to street sweeping. I don't know if what they say is right or not. All I know is that they say it." The next day, Doubletalk had something to report. "An enchanter's man stood beneath my broadcast post all night. Could be good if I'm in danger and need any protection," right tongue section, "or it could be bad if I'm not doing my job well. They put a new herald into my column," left tongue section. He blew out his lips to relax them. His mouth was tired. Triple-Tongue spoke very fast. "What do you think that about?" said Doubletalk. "Why don't you just speak plain? I'm tired of some people saying things I can't understand." Triple-Tongue sighed. A small tear trickled down his nose and spotted his jersey. He was tired of never being understood. "He said," translated Theysay, "what do you think it's all about?" "Oh," said Doubletalk, "why didn't you say so?" He blew out his tired tongue again. "They say there's a stranger in the streets talking about another kingdom and how foolish it is to live in the night and that we should all follow him and not obey the enchanter," said Theysay. "What?" said both of his friends in amazement. "I didn't say it," the third friend answered, shaking his head and backing away. "They said it." The very next night, Triple-Tongue noticed a stranger standing beneath his broadcast column. A soft light surrounded the man. Blowing his herald horn, Triple-Tongue made an announcement very quickly. "Myrtlesprick! Myrtlesprick!" Triple-Tongue heard a nearby taxi honk its horn. "Huh. "Na, na, na," shouted the people and rocked his post, as if he didn't have enough trouble with citizens yelling at him and the threat of new heralds. Now the city taxi company was interfering. Every herald knew about the cabbies who banded together to help the citizens of Enchanted City discover the true news. What a nuisance. 1 beep meant yes, 2 beeps meant no. He leaned from his column and peered into the shadows. How many honks did the horn honk? Triple-Tongue could barely see the stranger's smile. "The horn blasted twice, meaning the news you proclaimed was untrue. The only melons in the marketplace are moldy, ready for the garbage dump." "Oh," said Triple-Tongue. He'd been afraid of that. But why did he suddenly feel so ashamed? Was it because he had known there were no good melons in the marketplace? He let his herald horn dangle by its side. Its ribbon standard drooped into the dust at the top of his column. "In my kingdom," said the stranger, "we work very hard to speak what is. That way we can learn to trust one another. Your tongue became tripled at branding. You were afraid then, and you're afraid now. Come follow me, and I'll take away your fear, and you can learn to speak a new way." Suddenly, all the fears Triple-Tongue had ever known rose within him. The fear of the hot iron at branding, the fear of his parents leaving him, the fear of orphan dragnets, the fear of living with orphan keeper, the fear of not being understood, the fear of being understood too much. No wonder his tongue tripped over itself. Could it be possible never to fear again? Triple-Tongue climbed down from his broadcast column. He propped his herald horn against the base and tore the insignia of fire from his herald's jersey. He had had enough. No one ever understood him before, not the way this stranger in one brief moment understood him. "But my friends," he asked. "Take me to them," said the stranger. Soon they stood beneath Doubletalk's column. He was blowing his horn. On the right side of his mouth he announced, "Make way! The enchanter's coming, make way!" A nearby taxi honked its horn. Not true. Doubletalk made bubbles come out of his weary mouth. "City taxi company, bunch of troublemakers." This time he spoke out of the left side of his mouth. "Enchanter's not coming, and the right is, and he's not, he is not. The herald wiped the sweat off of his face and flapped his jersey to cool off in the warm night air. The taxi honked twice again. The stranger swung his lithe body halfway up the broadcast column in order to be seen by the exhausted announcer. "It's hard work speaking out of both sides of your mouth. The subjects in my kingdom say yes when they mean yes, and no when they mean no. It's a lot less trouble, believe me." Doubletalk sighed. What was this nuisance? Interfering with the official function of heraldry, Code 345. He'd better watch it. The enchanter's eye would be on him. "You're tired, Doubletalk," said the stranger. "You need a good rest. You've been working too hard at all the wrong things. Come join me, and I'll teach you to work at what really is." Doubletalk pulled the sweaty jersey over his head and hung it on a nail on his broadcasting column. It was time for his nightly break anyway. He admitted to himself that the stranger was right. He was tired of wearing his heraldry attire with its ridiculous stripes, but often he loved it too. He was tired of blowing the silly horns, but sometimes he blew it well and it sounded wonderful. He hated when people called him a noodle brain, and maybe he was. He climbed down wearily from the post and extinguished his nightlight as a sign that he was taking 10. Together, Triple-Tongue and Doubletalk and the stranger started out to find Theysay. He was heralding the time. "They say it's 5:30. They say daybreak is approaching. They say it's time to get ready for bed." The stranger stood beneath the column. Actually, they're wrong. People were made to live in the light. In my kingdom, they work and play during the day and sleep at night. "Who says?" challenged Theysay. He wondered how dawn surrounded the stranger. They must be wrong again about daybreak. The stranger suddenly tossed back his head and laughed. The The sound was amazing in this street at night, in this place where little laughter was ever heard. He pointed to himself confidently. I say, I have always said, I say now and will always say, live in the light. For the first time, Theysay realized how sick he was of what everyone else said. He put a hand on his hip and thought to himself, who cares? The words of the stranger struck him. How wonderful, how bold, how forthright. I say, I say. The herald thought he would try these words on himself. I say, you're right. That's what I say. They felt so good, those words on his tongue. His heart leaped within him. He vaulted down from the top of his column, swinging round and round to its base. I say, he shouted, the man's right. Live in the light. He put his herald horn to his lips and blew. The stranger drew the three of them near in a close huddle. Listen to me closely. What really matters is that you learn to live by what I say. Come. Be a part of my kingdom. Learn a new way. From somewhere in the distance, another herald proclaimed, the enchanters come and make way. The friends lifted their heads, fear flashing in their eyes. Nearby, a taxi honked a warning. Meh. True. The enchanter really was coming. Doubletalk began to jiggle on his toes. Oh, we're in for it now. The enchanter. The enchanter's coming. He shouted as though he thought he should never have left his post. How about a ride? Asked the stranger with a grim smile. He didn't seem afraid, but he was in a hurry. He snapped his fingers and the nearby taxi gunned its motor, turned its headlights on, accelerated, and then screeched to a stop at the curb beside them. The stranger opened the back door. Going my way? He asked the three. Herald horns began to blow from post to post, announcing the imminent arrival of the fire wizard. Triple-Tongue rushed into the taxi. He leaned forward to look at his two friends. Hurry! Hurry! Are you coming? Double-talk, they say? Both heralds shook their heads. Doubletalk turned his back and hastened to man his post again. Theysay stood paralyzed by fear. Make way! The enchanters! Come in! Make way! Cried a herald. Doubletalk! Triple-Tongue yelled. Come back! Theysay took a few steps away from the taxi. A long black limousine turned the corner at the end of the street. They could all see its ghostly driver. Doubletalk ran toward it, waving it down, pointing back in their direction. The cabbie stretched across, jerked the handle to close the back door. The stranger, still standing on the curbside, leaned through the front window. Tell Big Operator I sent. Suddenly, Theysay turned around and shouted, Wait! Wait! Don't go! Don't go without me! I say I want to come with you! The door was opened again. The boy jumped inside, and the taxi sped off. The two friends jostled and bounced against each other as the cab careened wildly through the side streets. Disconnected from the power line, the taxi ran mysteriously on its own, hiding in dark, unlit alleys and then cruising into a dark garage where a great overhead door slammed shut behind them. Who should we say sent us? Whispered Triple-Tongue. Yes, said Theysay. Who was the stranger? Don't you know? Asked the cabbie. That guy's the king. So the two boys joined the resistance of the king and worked for the restoration of his kingdom, one without fear and the other with a new confidence. They loved the new language that they learned, the language of the subjects of the kingdom, the king's own words. And they remembered with sorrow their friend Doubletalk, who was soon appointed the chief herald of the enchanter.